I watched my brother trade family for fantasy, loyalty for spectacle, love for control. What began as an extravagant celebration became a battlefield, one where silence cost more than money, and walking away meant saving your soul. You don't always lose people in death. Sometimes you lose them to their own reflection. When the envelope arrived, I thought it was a scam. One of those flashy mailers advertising timeshares or luxury cruises I'd never signed up for. But then I saw my name embossed in gold, and I froze. No mistaking that handwriting. Carter had always signed things like he was a royal heir. I opened it and pulled out a thick, pearlescent card with ink that looked like it had been printed in another tax bracket. I read it once. Then I read it again. And a third time, just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. Carter and Celeste were getting married. In Marbella, Spain. In September of 1997. And every invited guest was expected to contribute a modest sum of $68,000 to attend. I sat back in my kitchen chair, blinking at the words. My fridge was buzzing like it was also in shock. The letter went on and on about a curated European romance experience and an unforgettable Mediterranean moment. That modest sum would grant me access to a 3-day event, a pre-wedding soiree at a coastal vineyard, a flamenco performance under lanterns, and the main ceremony at a private estate with a hot air balloon finale. Oh, and flights weren't included. That was just the beginning. Also tucked into the envelope was a short memo, printed on linen paper and written in Celeste's dramatic, serif font. All attendees were required to sign a confidentiality agreement before receiving the final itinerary. Her exact words were, "We deeply value discretion. This isn't just a celebration. It's a legacy. A legacy. For real." My parents were already calling me before I finished reading the last line. Dad's voice came through the phone like he'd just bitten a lemon. "Tell me you didn't see it yet. Please tell me you haven't seen it." "I did," I said. "Just now. The invitation. It's real." "As a migraine," he snapped. "Your brother has lost his damn mind." Dad always had a way of putting things that hit a little too close to the truth. I sat there in silence while he ranted about how this wasn't a wedding. It was a hostile negotiation. He finally passed the phone to Mom, who tried her usual gentle approach, telling me this was Carter's dream and that we shouldn't judge until we've heard him out. I asked her point blank if she and Dad were going. She hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. "Your father's, let's say he's unconvinced. I'm still trying to find a way through this." "Through what?" "A $68,000 entrance fee." "It's not just the money," she said softly. "It's how Carter is framing it. Like if you don't come, you're not family." I laughed, but it wasn't the funny kind. "That's manipulative, Mom." "I know," she admitted. "But it's your brother. You know how stubborn he is." I hung up soon after and called Dana, my younger sister, who was already in a fury. "The audacity," she said, not even letting me say hello. I had to read it twice. Thought it was satire. "Tell me you're not going," I said. "I wouldn't go if they paid me 68 grand. I'm not signing a damn contract just to watch two narcissists exchange vows under imported roses." We both laughed, but underneath it, I felt sick. Because Dana was right, this wasn't just tacky. It felt gross. I remembered when Carter used to sneak us extra Halloween candy when we were little. He was never flashy back then. Something changed after he met Celeste. And now here we were. An overpriced, overseas wedding that felt more like a product launch than a family milestone. The next day, the family group chat came alive like someone had lit a fuse. Our cousin Tyler dropped a message that read, 68 grand for the privilege of clapping politely while they say I do? Count me out. Others chimed in fast. Aunt Leona called it a shakedown. Uncle Russ asked if the balloon ride came with a will and life insurance. Only one voice came through in support. Our cousin Miranda, who wrote, "We should be happy for them. This is the modern way." Someone replied with a picture of a dumpster fire. That night, Carter called me. I knew it was coming, but I still wasn't ready. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask about work or life or anything normal. He launched straight into, "So have you RSVP'd?" I told him I hadn't. His voice dropped. "What's the holdup?" "Carter, it's 68 grand. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience," he said. "You'll never forget it." "No, I won't," I replied. "Because I'll be paying it off for the next decade." He sighed like I'd disappointed him. "I thought you of all people would understand. This isn't just about money. It's about presence, about support, about family." That's a hell of a way to test loyalty, by sending a bill. Silence. Then occurred. "You do what you want. But don't pretend this won't be noticed." The line went dead a moment later. He'd hung up. For the next few hours, I just sat in my living room, staring at the invitation on my coffee table. I didn't even have the energy to be angry anymore. It was too ridiculous, too surreal. I poured a drink and turned off my phone. I woke up the next morning to 23 new messages in the group chat, most of them from family members I hadn't spoken to since Grandpa's funeral. The topic, of course, was still Carter's wedding. If you could call it a wedding anymore and not some kind of corporate-themed ego circus. Tyler had renamed the chat The Cult of Celeste, and Vanessa was live commenting her reactions as she reread the invitation aloud for her roommate. I scrolled through and saw Uncle Russ had written, "This ain't a wedding. It's a fundraiser for the rich and delusional." That one got 13 thumbs up, a crying laugh emoji from Aunt Carrie, and a single thumbs down from Miranda, who was still riding hard for Carter and Celeste like she'd been promised a throne. I sipped coffee and watched the madness unfold. One message after another. Tyler claimed he'd tried to price match the wedding package online and found something similar being offered by a 5-star cult retreat in Costa Rica for half the price and with a free sarong. The whole thing would have been hilarious if it didn't also feel so tense. Like something sacred was cracking under pressure. Our family wasn't perfect, but we'd always shown up for each other, even when it was inconvenient. That was the unspoken rule. You attend the graduations, the funerals, the holiday cookouts, and yes, the weddings. But this was a test of loyalty none of us had ever agreed to take. That afternoon, Dana called again. She sounded more furious than the last time. "You see the part where Carter's charging extra for the Moonlight Kayak tour after the rehearsal dinner? That's apparently not even included in the 68 grand. "You're kidding," I said, though I already knew she wasn't. "Blake, I did the math. If you include flights, the signing fee for the NDA, the hotel taxes, the meals not covered by the wedding package, this trip hits 80,000. Before souvenirs." I rubbed my temples and leaned against the kitchen counter. This is starting to feel like a Ponzi scheme, not a celebration. Dana laughed, but there wasn't a drop of humor in it. "Honestly, I'm not even mad anymore. I'm impressed. They actually think this makes sense." Then she said something that made me pause. "You think Carter's being manipulated? Or is he really this far gone?" That question sat with me for hours after we hung up. I wanted to believe my brother hadn't completely lost touch with reality. That maybe, somehow, Celeste had pulled him into her orbit and twisted the world around him. But deep down, I couldn't deny the truth creeping in. Carter wasn't being dragged along. He was the one holding the damn torch. That night, I decided to respond to his call from earlier. I figured I'd try to talk to him. Not argue, not judge, just talk. He answered on the second ring, sounding sharp and annoyed, like I'd just interrupted something important. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. "I've been thinking," I told him, keeping my voice calm. "This whole wedding, do you really think it's reasonable?" There was a pause, then a sharp laugh. "What's reasonable, Blake? A potluck in a church basement? A DJ who plays the chicken dance? This is our moment. We're creating something people will remember forever." "You mean they'll remember the bill?" "You don't get it," he said, and I could hear the bitterness bubbling just beneath his polished tone. "This isn't for people like you. People like me? You're content with average," he said flatly. "Mediocrity. You live in the same house you've had for 10 years, work the same job, eat the same leftovers. You wouldn't recognize elegance if it slapped you across the face." I froze for a second, stunned by how easily the insult rolled off his tongue. "That's rich," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Coming from someone who wants his relatives to fund his fantasy. Silence. "You do what you want," he said finally. "But don't expect to be welcomed warmly if you don't show up." He hung up before I could reply. The next few days felt like watching a dam crack inch by inch. The decorators canceled. Apparently, Celeste had refused to finalize the design theme until the week before, and they were booked solid. Then the catering company dropped out, claiming their deposit hadn't cleared. Dana called me 2 nights later, almost breathless with laughter. "You will not believe what Tyler found." "What?" "He got a hold of a vendor email. Don't ask how. And apparently, the flamenco troupe they hired backed out because they didn't receive any contracts. Celeste promised them exposure in place of an official deposit." I covered my face and groaned. "That can't be real." "Oh, it's real. She said the wedding would be attended by select cultural influencers, and that performing would be a branding opportunity." The chat was on fire after that. People dropping out by the hour. Aunt Carrie announced she wasn't attending because no celebration is worth going into debt for. Cousin Derek posted, "Tell me why I feel like they're about to ask us to bring our own chairs." Then, just when I thought it couldn't get more absurd, I got a letter from Celeste. Yes, a literal letter. Handwritten. On lavender-scented paper. It began, Dearest Blake, I'm saddened by your recent energy. I knew I was in for something when the first sentence sounded like she was mourning me from a Victorian balcony. The letter was 4 pages long. She spoke of family energy, spiritual contracts, and legacy vibrations. At one point, she wrote, "We are not simply exchanging vows. We are elevating the collective soul of those brave enough to witness us." I tossed the letter onto the table and called Dana. Guess who just tried to guilt-trip me using chakras? She didn't even ask. Lavender envelope. Yup. Oh, she's making the rounds. Mine came with pressed violets and a tiny glass bead taped to the corner. What the hell is the bead for? No clue. Some kind of third-eye clarity charm, I think. We laughed until we couldn't breathe, which, honestly, was the first moment of actual joy I'd felt since this whole circus began. But under that laughter was a growing tension, one we couldn't shake. Carter wasn't backing down. Celeste was doubling down. In our family, we were being split like firewood. By the end of the week, the guest list had dropped below 50 names, and that was being generous. Someone, probably Tyler, leaked a screenshot from Carter's wedding planner's email that showed the original RSVPs compared to current confirmations. More than half the family had quietly backed out, and even a few of Celeste's own cousins had sent formal declines. The chat was turning into a funeral wake mixed with a roast. People weren't even trying to be polite anymore. Aunt Carrie posted, "This is not a wedding. It's a multi-level emotional scam." Uncle Russ replied, "I'd rather be in traffic during a snowstorm than sit through that spectacle." But the real chaos started when Mom finally gave up trying to keep the peace. She sent a single message, just one sentence. "Your father and I will not be attending." And just like that, the thread went silent for nearly 3 hours. Nobody had expected them to actually back out. They were the glue, the silent guarantee that no matter how crazy things got, at least they'd be there to make it look like a real family event. When Dana called me later that night, she didn't even say hello. "They're unraveling," she whispered, like we were eavesdropping on a crime scene. "Who is?" "Carter and Celeste." Mom told me Carter called and screamed at Dad for abandoning him. Dad hung up on him mid-rant. "That's a first," I said, not even surprised anymore. "I know. But get this. Celeste apparently tried to call Mom right after and left her a voicemail so long it got cut off." "What did she say?" "Mostly nonsense. Something about betrayal and sacred vows. She also accused Mom of inheriting a scarcity mindset. Whatever the hell that means." I had no words left. I just laughed, loud and uncontrollably. At this point, there was nothing left to do but laugh. 2 days later, the wedding planners bailed. Dana sent me the update at 7 in the morning because apparently sleep was optional now. "Just got word. The planning team dropped them." "You're joking." I typed back, even though I knew she wasn't. "Nope." Reasons listed were unrealistic demands, unclear communication, and verbal hostility from the client. I covered my face with my hands. I could practically see the dominoes falling in slow motion. Mom called me a few hours later. She sounded tired. Not angry, not panicked, just emotionally drained in that way people get when they've run out of patience. "We tried," she said. "We really tried." "I know, Mom. I told Carter we loved him, but that this wasn't about love anymore. It was about ego and delusion." "How did he take that?" "Like a child who didn't get dessert," she said. He hung up again. I think that's his new strategy. By that evening, the hot air balloon company had also canceled. Tyler gleefully posted a blurry screenshot of an email that read, "Due to incomplete booking documentation and lack of payment, we are unable to proceed." Cousin Vanessa commented, "What's next?" "The ring bearer files for bankruptcy." I didn't even know who was still going. Last we heard, some distant family friends were still planning to fly out. But even that felt like a maybe. Then the yacht company pulled out. Dana called, nearly howling with laughter. "Do you understand what this means?" she said through actual giggles. "They don't have the boat anymore." "No boat, Blake. No balloon, no planner, no boat," I muttered. "What exactly is left?" "Celeste and a speaker playing harp music in an empty garden." "Don't forget the NDA," she said. "That still stands." Of course it did. Because nothing screams intimacy like forcing your family to sign legal documents before they can clap at your wedding. I hadn't spoken directly to Carter since the last blow-up, but I'd heard from Mom that he was calling cousins, trying to convince people to reconsider. Some of them didn't even answer. Others just said no and hung up. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, my phone rang. It was him. I stared at the screen for a second, weighing my options. I could ignore it and avoid another fight. Or I could answer and see where this rabbit hole went. I picked up. "You win." he said, before I could say anything. His voice sounded flat, like all the air had finally leaked out of him. When what? You don't have to pay, he said. I'll cover your flight, your hotel, everything. Just be there. I leaned back in my chair, blinking in disbelief. You're serious? Yes, he snapped. But the NDA still stands. There it was, the line he wouldn't cross. I paused for a second, then said, so let me get this straight. You insulted me, guilt-tripped the family, mocked my entire life, and now that the wedding's falling apart, you want me to show up for free? But still muzzle me with a contract. It's not about that, he said quickly. It's about presence. I want my brother there. With a gag order? It's just a formality, he insisted. Everyone important signs them. No, I said calmly. People who need to hide things sign them. People who want privacy just ask. He went silent. For a full 10 seconds, I thought maybe he'd hung up again. Then he said, you don't understand what this is doing to Celeste. People are dropping out. She's unraveling. Maybe that's because you both treated this like a royal coronation, I said, and forgot you were inviting actual human beings. Don't start, he warned. His voice was sharp now. Defensive. I'm not starting anything, I said. I'm just not joining the wreckage. You'll regret this, he said, suddenly cold. No, Carter. What I regret is watching you turn a wedding into a hostage situation. Then I hung up. And this time, I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. An hour later, the group chat exploded again. Aunt Carrie had apparently confirmed with the hotel that no full payment had been made. They were threatening to pull the plug. That same hotel, the one mentioned on the embossed invite, the one Celeste described as heaven carved into stone, was on the verge of walking away from the biggest weekend of her life. Emma wrote, so they were charging us 80 grand per person, but didn't pay the vendors? Tyler replied, this is starting to feel like a failed GoFundMe campaign. Someone else dropped a rumor that the florist hadn't received a single payment and had ghosted them entirely. Then came the biggest moment of the night. Celeste, in what can only be described as a digital meltdown, posted a 5-paragraph rant in the wedding chat. You people are destroying this. Do you understand that? I built a dream. And instead of supporting it, you're sabotaging it with your bitterness and your ignorance. You've embarrassed us, humiliated us, and it's not fair. A minute later, another message came through. You should all be ashamed. You call yourselves family, but you behave like strangers. Ungrateful, petty strangers. That one got no replies. Not even Miranda could defend it. For the next few days, nobody said much in the group chat. It was like we'd all decided to sit in silence and watch the flames instead of trying to put the fire out. Even Tyler stopped making jokes, which said more than any message could. Then, just after 9 on a cloudy Wednesday night, Dana called me again. I could tell from her voice that something big had dropped. She gave him an ultimatum, she said, not bothering with context. I didn't need it. Celeste? I asked. Of course Celeste. She told Carter it's her or us. No middle ground. I let that sit there in my mind for a moment. It didn't surprise me, not really. But hearing it out loud still hit hard. She actually told him to cut off his family? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She said, and I quote, if they can't support our future, they can't be part of it. She gave him until midnight. I stared out the window, watching the streetlight flicker through a wind-blown tree. Somewhere, maybe across the ocean, my brother was staring at his life and trying to figure out how much of it he was willing to burn. Mom and Dad? I asked. Heartbroken, Dana said, but not surprised. Mom's been crying all day. Dad said if Carter chooses her, he's not welcome in the house anymore. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say. For hours, the family thread stayed quiet. No updates. No messages. Not even a meme. Just this long, painful silence where we all waited to see what Carter would choose. And then, just before 10, he called me again. He didn't sound angry this time. Didn't sound bitter, either. Just exhausted. Like a man dragging himself through the last mile of a bad marathon. I ended it, he said. I blinked. You what? I called it off. The wedding. The engagement. Everything. It's over. I leaned forward in my chair, suddenly alert. Are you serious? She lost her mind the second I said I wasn't cutting off my family. Started screaming. Accused me of ruining her life. Called me spineless. She threw a vase across the room and told me I was a failure. Jesus, Carter. I just stood there, he said, his voice distant. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just nothing. For the first time, I saw her. Really saw her. And I knew. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. I let the silence breathe for a while. Then I asked the only thing that mattered. You okay? He gave a soft, Humorless laugh. I don't know. I packed my bag. Booked a flight home. Sitting in the airport now, trying not to fall apart. You did the right thing, I told him. And I'm proud of you. He didn't respond at first. Just breathed through the phone. Then finally said, thanks, Blake. That means more than you know. We stayed on the line for a while, not saying much. Just being there. Sometimes that's all anyone needs. Right as we were about to hang up, Dana called. I picked up her line and put Carter on hold. She was practically vibrating. Check the forum. Right now, she's posting about him. What? She's online, telling her side of the story. And it's wild. I hung up and pulled it up. And there it was, a giant post titled, Speaking My Truth After Betrayal. Celeste wasn't just venting. She was rewriting history. In her version, Carter had been manipulated by a toxic family who never accepted her, pressured into abandoning the one person who truly loved him. She talked about emotional abuse, about spiritual violations, about betrayal. And then came the screenshots, cropped, selective, clearly meant to paint him as cold and cruel. The next part almost made me spit out my drink. She launched a GoFundMe. The page was titled, Help Me Heal, a Journey of Emotional Recovery. She was asking for $50,000 to fund a retreat, therapy, and legal support to reclaim her narrative. I couldn't believe it. And yet, somehow I could. I sent it to Carter. He responded 3 minutes later. Karma's wearing heels and a full face of makeup. The next few days passed in a blur. Carter landed back in Minnesota and went completely quiet. No drama. No shouting. Just quiet. Like a man walking through the rubble after the fire's gone out. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my door. He looked different. Not broken. Not angry. Just calm. Like someone who'd finally crawled out of a storm and realized the sky still existed. I let him in and didn't ask anything. He sat on my couch, stared at the ceiling, and said, I don't even remember why I wanted that wedding in the first place. Because she wanted it, I said. And you thought it meant love? He didn't argue. He came to dinner that night at Mom and Dad's place. It was quiet. No speeches. No tears. Just meatloaf and mashed potatoes and the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Dana showed up halfway through dessert, tossed him a beer, and said, Welcome back. Try not to propose to anyone for at least a year. We all laughed. Even Carter. But the story wasn't over. A few months later, Dana called me in full detective mode. She's engaged again. What? Celeste. New guy. Some finance bro named Troy. She posted a picture of the ring and everything. No way. Oh, it gets better, Dana said. Same venue. Same date. Same dress. I couldn't believe it. She had rebooked the entire wedding. Like nothing ever happened. Like Carter had just been a trial run. Carter didn't say much when I told him. Just shrugged and said, Well, I guess I was never the groom. Just the placeholder. But I could tell it hit him harder than he let on. Then came the twist none of us saw coming. A tabloid article surfaced 3 weeks later. Someone had sent it to Tyler, who posted it in the group chat without a caption. The headline read, Luxury Wedding Scandal. Guests charged thousands for reused ceremony. Turns out Celeste had kept Carter's wedding plans almost exactly the same. The same vendors, same itinerary, even some of the same invitations. She just switched the name on the groom. And the kicker? Some of Carter's family friends, who didn't get the memo, actually attended. That's when I realized the truth. She never wanted a marriage. She wanted an audience. Carter didn't say much about the wedding after the article came out. He didn't rage, didn't vent, didn't even really react. I think by then, he'd detached from it all, like it had happened to someone else and not him. Instead, he went back to work, started going to the gym again, and finally stopped replying to Celeste's texts. Because yes, she tried. First, she sent a casual message, like nothing had ever happened. Just a simple, hey, hope you're doing okay. That evolved into longer texts over the next few weeks, each one layered with manipulation disguised as vulnerability. She missed him. She felt misunderstood. She wanted to talk. Maybe just once. Maybe for closure. He didn't answer a single one. He told me later that silence was the loudest choice he could make. Time moved forward, even if the story still echoed in all of us. One day, Dana told me Carter had started seeing someone, Elise, a nurse he met at a community fundraiser. She was calm, grounded, and the complete opposite of everything Celeste had ever been. She didn't post 20 stories a day. She didn't speak in astrology metaphors. She didn't treat Carter like a project to be managed. She treated him like a person. The first time I met her was at a small birthday dinner for Carter. She shook my hand and said, So you're the famous Blake who warned him about the volcano before it erupted. I laughed, more surprised than anything. She had a sense of humor, but she wasn't trying too hard. She just fit. It was the first time I'd seen Carter truly relaxed around someone in years. Meanwhile, Celeste's rebrand wasn't going so well. After the wedding scandal leaked, a few brands that had once paid her for influencer content quietly pulled out. Then a not-so-quiet one posted a statement saying they do not align with dishonesty and public manipulation. The GoFundMe disappeared without warning, and her new relationship with Troy collapsed faster than anyone expected. Dana, of course, kept tabs on the whole meltdown. She deleted almost everything. She told me one night over the phone. Photos, posts, tags, gone. It's like she's trying to vanish and start again. I wasn't surprised. That had always been Celeste's strength, reinventing herself in whatever image best suited her moment. The problem was, eventually people stopped buying new masks when they've seen the same face underneath. Then came the call that none of us expected. It was a Sunday morning in spring. I was halfway through cooking breakfast when Carter knocked on my door, holding his phone like it was radioactive. He handed it to me without saying a word. There it was, a new message from Celeste. And this time, it wasn't fake warmth or poetic nonsense. It was a full confession, or something close to one. She admitted to lying about certain things. She admitted she had spiraled, that she had tried to control too much, and that she was sorry. But at the end of the message was the part that made my stomach tighten. I miss what we almost had. I still believe in what we built. Maybe it wasn't the right time, but maybe the door doesn't have to stay shut forever. I looked up at Carter, who was watching me like he already knew what I'd say. You're not thinking of responding, are you? He shook his head. No, I just needed to see someone else read it. To make sure I'm not crazy. You're not, I said. You're just being tested one last time. He nodded slowly. It felt like a test. It didn't stop there. A week later, Dana called me sounding breathless. She's back on social media. Sort of. What do you mean, sort of? She's posting anonymously now. Like under some fake name. Wellness content, vague motivational crap, all clearly recycled. You're sure it's her? I'd bet money on it, Dana said. Same writing style. Same fonts. She even reused part of her wedding vows in one post. The desperation was practically leaking through the screen. She had lost control of the narrative, and she couldn't stand the silence. But the twist, the real twist, came exactly 6 months later. I was at the grocery store when Carter called me with a tone I hadn't heard before. Calm, steady, but a little too even. She's suing me, he said, like he was telling me the weather. I nearly dropped my basket. Come again. She filed a lawsuit. Claims I caused her emotional distress. Says my abandonment ruined her public image, led to financial losses, and damaged her long-term brand potential. She's suing you for not marrying her? Pretty much. He sent me the legal document later that day. It was the most unhinged thing I had ever read. Paragraphs of delusion, sprinkled with buzzwords, ending in a request for $300,000. Dana's reaction was immediate. She's actually insane. Like full-on cartoon villain level. Uncle Russ offered to call a lawyer friend. Aunt Carrie just sent a bottle of wine to Carter's house with a note that said, "Drink this before court, not during." The lawsuit didn't last long. The judge dismissed it without ceremony. Lack of standing. No proof of damages. No basis in reality. Carter walked out of that courtroom free, but not unfazed. It wasn't about money. It was about the fact that she couldn't let go unless she burned everything behind her. That was the last time we heard from her. Months passed, and life went on. Carter got a promotion at work, moved into a new place, and started traveling again with Elise. Mom finally stopped worrying every time the phone rang. Dad actually smiled again during family dinners. And Dana, bless her, started writing a screenplay about the whole mess. She claimed it was inspired by real events, but legally distinct. I didn't argue. I just told her to change the names. Then, one evening, Carter and I were sitting on my porch, beers in hand, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. He turned to me and said, "You ever wonder how close I was to going through with it?" "All the time," I said. "But then I remember you didn't. That's what matters." He nodded slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "Do you think people can really change?" he asked. I thought about it for a while. Then I said, "People can grow, but not if they keep pretending they're perfect." He smiled, just a little. Then I guess I finally started growing. That was the moment I knew it was truly over. Not just the wedding, not just the madness, but the shadow it had cast. He wasn't haunted anymore. He wasn't running. He was just living.